everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about cosplay and video game development. So just to start, who am I? I am a community manager for Romero Games, and I have also consulted with game creators on cosplay design to improve the likelihood of characters being cosplayed. I did not start with my name is Maezza. I realize now. So I've been working in the industry for about 6 years now, and I've done a few different things, but my biggest thing is, at the moment, is being a community manager, but I have worked on a few projects where I've offered my own feedback on this. As well as that, I have also been involved in the cosplay community for around 10 years, mostly from ages 14 to 18, but I'm trying to get back into it at the moment. I've done around 10 completed cosplays, and I have participated heavily in Cyberpunk 2077 cosplay groups. As you can see, it's like my biggest thing at the moment. And this is my group. We go to London conventions, and I'm really big into this, and it's really cool because we have one of the voice actors who actually came along with us to introduce us. So I'm really into this, and I'm really excited to talk to you about cosplay when it comes to game development. So I don't think I have to explain this, but just as a quick run through, what is cosplay, just to start? So the goal of cosplay is to attempt to recreate a specific character, and this can be through costume, mannerisms, etc. This is my friend Jack as Johnny Silverhand. And there's different levels of craft. This is my friend Penny. This is him doing his Halo cosplay, and generally, of course, they're from fandoms, TV shows, video games, books, or comics, and it's incredibly popular in, obviously, anime and gaming fandoms. And something that I do quite a lot as well that I like to highlight as one of the levels of cosplay, because like I said, there's different levels of craft, is closet cosplay, which is made up of clothing that was purchased or found in a closet or thrift store with minor modification. This was me at the Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty launch, where I put together, this wasn't even in the game, I put together a look inspired by Corpo, and it was literally just stuff I had and I threw it together, and I still consider it a cosplay, and I think it's really important to talk about the different layers of cosplay and how they can kind of come to be and how people can make them their own. As well, some adventurous cosplayers might seek to replicate mannerisms and body language in live-action roleplay, and some go far enough to schedule meetups. I've done this before with my Cyberpunk group. We kind of roleplay, we'll kind of do different things, and it gets more intense, and we kind of stay in character with other cosplayers or LARPers for hours, so it's really fun. But the big thing, if you're not familiar with cosplay, is to understand that it is different from costuming. Costuming allows for infinite creative room, and cosplay is constrained to specific characters or universes. That's not to say one is better than the other, but it's important to separate the two when we're talking about it in the industry so people understand. And original characters and player characters are welcome, and spin-offs as well, that's also important. And when we look at games and stuff, we can see people doing their own sort of things inspired by games, especially when it comes to Dragon Age and other kind of fantasy games. You'll often see people putting together their own characters, which is just as valid as characters that actually exist in the universe. There's also spin-offs, like I love these. I wanted to do a pink pyramid head cosplay for ages, and I love the kind of spin-offs that people do. It's super creative. Also, gender swaps have been really popular as of late, and they've been really cool because it's really creative to see how people will take characters and make them their own and change them. But I suppose, why would anyone, why would anyone want to cosplay creatively? So there's tons of reasons. The largest one that we've noticed with players is that it gives them an extended sense of agency or influence on their favorite games. It can let them insert themselves in their own games. It can let them feel like they have a point in it and kind of their own creative room in it. So it's definitely the biggest thing for me that I notice with this is people want their own freedom and creative room. But the biggest thing that comes from this, when you give people room to do this and you encourage cosplay, is conventions are super, super interesting to me that they have gotten so big as of late, and how people have gone to these and made friends and communities through cosplay especially. I mean, in fact, my friends, these are my friends that I met through the Phantom Liberty party, and we've attended loads of conventions in London together, and I've gotten super close with them, largely because of cosplay. And it's definitely been something super important to us, and I think for this kind of convention, something that is really interesting that I love about this one that I do as well is we actually do our own TTRPG, Cyberpunk, on YouTube. So we've gone from just cosplaying the characters to kind of involving ourselves directly in the world, and even going as far to think about cosplaying our own TTRPG characters, which is, as I was saying, it's kind of about cosplaying original characters and how that still fits into the universes. But you might be wondering, what does cosplay have to do with game design? As a designer, like, why would I be interested in this, and why would a team be interested in this? And there's actually surprisingly loads that cosplay has to do with game design. Developers are thinking a lot about this now. It provides a great marketing opportunity, and it improves character design and lore when we consider what players might be interested in. We always do this in early design. We always think now, and it used to be something that was new when I was first giving this talk. People weren't really thinking about cosplay as much, but now I see nearly every studio will be asking questions about this. They'll be looking at other designs, and they'll be making cosplay guides or starting them at the start of development. And it's really, really interesting to see how much they're focusing on this now. And the biggest thing for me as a community developer is that it gives players or people who are fans an opportunity to connect with the game in a more intimate way. It's completely different from just playing it, because really people will start to insert themselves in whatever fandom they're part of in a way that's super creative and super unique to them. And the way we've seen it now is the more unique a character is, the more compelled people may feel to cosplay him or her. And uniqueness and thinking about it from a point of, what I want to dress like this, do I like this character, has really improved our design of characters altogether, because we're trying to make them way more visually interesting than we would have before. And even recently, I was looking at this, and like nearly every studio is doing this now, whereas before I struggled to find cosplay guides of studios. I recently added some new stuff to this talk, and the first time that I was looking at these, there was only one that was around, and it was this one. And I was like, this is really early, but I thought it was really interesting how far they've come from this to this. Like, this is really high fidelity, and they're really thinking about what cosplayers might be wanting to look at and the things they want to make. Whereas before it was very vague and it was just kind of zoomed in things, but now these things are super, super high level, and to the point where like they're zooming in on exact stitches. So it's something that we're definitely thinking about down to the stitch is cosplay and players and how they'll appreciate the characters that we make. Another thing is it provides really important feedback for us as developers. You know, we want to know how players feel about the characters. And it creates a really unique conversation between fans and developers of a series. It tells us what fans like, it keeps the community alive, and it also allows us to focus on making unique and interesting characters, like I said. It creates lasting impressions on potential players, and it gives the player an additional agency and lets them feel like they are part of that world. So it's really interesting to me, because we've been doing, when I've done development previously on other projects, we would actually get in contact with cosplayers and ask them if they thought our designs were interesting enough, if they liked the characters that they saw. And as we changed the characters, the more unique they felt and the more real they felt at the same time. So it's definitely really great for us as developers to look at what cosplayers like. And also it helps us look for holes in the market, you know, like what's oversaturated, what has been done too much. And I see a lot now in series, I don't often see characters that look very similar. And I think that this is definitely because cosplay is becoming more and more of a focus for developers, as they're really trying to make characters that stand out. I notice this a lot with Baldur's Gate especially. There's very small things that they have in each of the characters that's super unique. And I know when I'm looking at it as a developer, I'm like, that's because they want people to make that, or that's because they want them to cosplay that. So if you look at characters and you look at little things, you'll notice how developers are really starting to think about this audience in particular. And it also tells us what we could be doing better. As a community developer as well, something that I really focus on, especially as someone who is mixed race, is character diversity. You know, I didn't see a lot of characters who looked like me growing up. I didn't have anything to cosplay, and I still think that this is something that needs to be worked on, especially when it comes to hair types, because I don't often see characters with my hair type, if at all. And it's, you know, characters that are unique to each person. I tend to like those the most. Like, I like Baldur's Gate, I like Cyberpunk because V can be anybody, Tav can be anybody. So it's really something that I think could be worked on, but I think that there's considerations about this in character creation as of late. And while, you know, this isn't in the world of games, the first time I ever actually saw a character that I thought I could cosplay or dress as was Angel Evangelista in Pose, which was, I think I saw it in 2020. And I was just in complete awe, and I immediately wanted to cosplay her. And so I think the big thing that, you know, that we're trying to do now and we're learning from is considering those who might not see themselves represented often. You know, that comes to people who are, of course, like I said, people of color, and that also comes to people who have different gender identities, different abilities, disabilities. And I think that we're really trying to incorporate people and involve them as much as we possibly can in our design. So, you know, when we start designing characters, you know, we have to ask ourselves, how do we create a character? Where do we start? And how would you make one that's interesting to players to look at? So the first thing I always do, and the team always does, is we consider our IP. And an IP, you know, you would start by understanding the universe or world that you're going for. And this involves the lore, the existing characters, themes, and overall tones that you'd like to set in your world. And your character should feel like a natural part of this world, contributing to the overall depth and appeal of whatever you're making. You kind of want to think about your character's backstory, motivations, and relationships with other characters to enhance the richness of your IP. From that point, you want to consider how your character fits into the story. There should be a clear role and purpose. Are they a protagonist, antagonist, or a side character? How do they drive the plot forward? How do they contribute to the development of other characters? And their actions, decisions, and growth should be meaningful and impact the story's progression. So you want to figure out, and in saying that, characters don't necessarily have to be super, super influential in the story. Like someone who I thought was really interesting, who I have later, was Deacon from Fallout 4, who literally is like super mysterious. He barely kind of says about anything that's obvious, but he has so many cosplays and he's just in a t-shirt and jeans, and that's because his character is so interesting because of the lack that they get, like the lack of information they give. And people also really like kind of ambiguous characters and characters that you don't know much about, because it makes them want to kind of create their own headcanons and dresses them. So in saying, considering a character fitting into the story, it doesn't have to be super obvious. It should just kind of make sense and feel interesting to whoever's looking at it. You want to think about how unique physical markings fit into the story. Physical features, tattoos, scars, etc. They can add depth to a character's backstory and personality, and like I said, can tell stories without the character explicitly saying them or revealing them. These features you don't always have to have it, but it's kind of cool to consider, like what the story could be behind them, and you don't always have to reveal that. Whether it's a rite of passage, a consequence, or a past event. And it makes the character not only more interesting just altogether, but it allows for visual storytelling. And I think as well, as I was saying with my point on diversity and how much I like to focus on inclusion in development, is I think it's really important to consider how your character fits in with players. I always try to think about, do you have diverse body types, races, gender expressions? It's really important to consider the diversity and inclusivity of the characters you're creating. Players from various backgrounds should be able to see themselves in your characters or find them relatable in some way. And as I said, this includes diverse body types, races, all kinds of different things to make sure that it's inclusive as possible. And a diverse cast can really enrich the gaming experience and broaden your audience. I work with, like I said, I work with Romero Games as a community developer, and the thing we've noticed is that the more we kind of talk about inclusivity and the more we focus on it, the better our community has been as a whole. And we always are trying to consider all of the players that are there. And especially for me, as I was saying, as someone who didn't see myself often in games, I'm always trying to push for the team to make characters that everyone can see themselves in as much as we possibly can. I think they're probably sick of me saying it. I'm joking, they're not at all. But I'm always like, I need this character. So I think it's really cool because especially with indie games, there's a lot of freedom and you have an opportunity to really kind of change things and give people something to see themselves in. And also, as well as like just inclusivity, will people generally feel good about playing this character? Like the playability and appeal, they don't need to feel great all the time. Like your character can do terrible things. There's plenty of games where they let you do terrible things. Again, like Baldur's Gate, you can do an evil run, you can be an awful person, which is, I kind of do that sometimes. But in a general sense, they should feel empowered or in control, intrigued, or emotionally connected to whoever they're playing or whoever is in the story. You want to consider their abilities, their skills, and personality traits that can make the gameplay enjoyable and fulfilling. And of course, as well, generally, like you want to be really careful with avoiding stereotypes and ensuring the character's portrayal is respectful and thoughtful. And that can be done through asking people who are part of those backgrounds, who are part of those communities, asking them for feedback on what their experiences are so you can make a character that's as true as possible to what they believe that it should be. And also, in saying all this, you want to make sure, can this character be animated or coded, or have you created a nightmare for your team? So although creativity is great, we have had instances, in my previous project, we had a character who we wanted to have in a wheelchair for diversity, but we weren't at the point where we could do it for a while because it was just too early and it was too much for the team. But the idea was said, but you need to keep in mind sometimes characters might just be squashed a little bit if the team isn't able to take care of it, or if you're making your own game, it might be something to consider is like, what can you really do? So go crazy with creativity, just keep in mind the limits of what you have, the limits of your team and the limits of yourself if you're working on your own. And then what makes a character particularly cosplayable? Physical features are a big thing, as I mentioned, whether it's a scar, a birthmark, or a certain type of makeup or unique physical feature. A character's physical features can go a really long way in making them instantly identifiable on site. I think if I seen someone just like put that on their head, even if they weren't wearing anything else, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I know what character that is. And there's plenty of characters now that they're trying to do really unique visual makeup and different things. Like, I find it so cool whenever I can see this in characters and whenever I see people doing this makeup. Like, I mean, you could genuinely, like with a lot of characters, you could just wear a certain style of makeup and I think people would completely understand who you were. And you know, that then goes into facial hair. The thing I always notice when people cosplay The Witcher is the facial hair is always so on point, and I'm always like, this is a thing. Like, people genuinely they focus on this. Like, facial hair is such a thing with these characters. I mean, and I have a friend who was growing his beard for like a year, and he shaved the entire thing just to cosplay Jackie Wells. And it was like, this is what I mean though, is like, if it's a lack of facial hair, if it's facial hair in general, it can be such a thing for cosplayers. But characters with short hair, easily purchasable wigs tend to be the most popular. Bald characters are much harder to cosplay, of course, but characters with facial hair also encourage older male cosplayers to dress up. So you can start to think about them and incorporating them in your audience by making characters that they can see themselves in too. And as I said, consider other hair type options too. Clothing is a big one. Unique outfits encourage cosplayers to cosplay as the character wearing them. And you can also attempt to target closet cosplayers by making your designs simple enough. But like, genuinely, again, like, this is my friend's, this is like very high fidelity V cosplay, but just like, he just started out with the jacket, really. And and I've seen people who just wear the jacket and I know exactly who they are. Like, it's such an iconic look to it that you could just get it and wear it. And that's what I really love about clothing design, is that it can just be that make or break thing that can make it either easy for someone to cosplay your character or difficult. Poses are also something that I often tell people to consider when they're making their characters. They're extremely important. They bring life, personality, and composition to cosplays. And poses are sometimes, if not always, directly from the source of the game, show, etc., that the characters use from, and they are most often used at conventions and photo shoots. So this, like in the middle, like that is such a popular pose with Pyro from TF2. Like, it's literally so iconic, and I see this all the time now, is how people will pose. Like, even in the, like, I keep talking about Baldur's Gate, but it's because they do it so well. They have like the little character portraits, and I've seen people recreate those character portraits like exactly. And when I first saw it, I was like, I feel like this is what it's for. And then I seen all the cosplays where they were doing the exact pose in it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what they were trying to do. So if you notice, people will do this all the time. You know, like even here, I've seen Lich King cosplays do this exact pose, and they know that they're doing this because people are going to cosplay it. The poses are super important because it lets people personify a character through body language and gestures, and it really brings life to a cosplay. Because I've done cosplay photo shoots before. I was like comfortable in front of a camera, and I was kind of just there like, haha. But then whenever I learned the poses for my particular character, because I do Panem, I do V, I do Ada Wong, and when I learned poses for those characters, I was so much more comfortable in front of the camera because I actually felt like that character. So it's definitely something that I think is super important because it makes it easily recognizable to other players too, or fans of who you are. And group cosplays can sometimes appear awkward if they're not posed correctly. They can make a character seem cool, and it encourages people to dress up or get involved in groups. Props are also super important. In conjunction with poses, one of the character's most important attributes is unique props that they can hold around and establish setting and purpose. I genuinely, like, every time I see the Final Fantasy cosplayers, I'm not big into it, but like every time I see it, they always have these crazy props, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And like, it's such a big design thing for a lot of studios. They will really put a lot into this. And for cosplayers, I know some, like, I do not have the patience to be making swords, but I know some cosplayers who spend hours and hours making props or weapons. Like my friend Penny, he 3D prints all of his Halo stuff, and it's so much work, but he loves it so much. And every time he sees a game that has a prop that's cool, he's like, oh, I want to make it so bad. So even when it comes to indie games, I've seen indie game cosplays that are like, that have really cool props, and you know, it really makes it such a standout thing at a convention for your title. Backstory, as I said, Deacon, the backstory or near complete absence of one is critical to cosplayers. It gives them, it gives the character personality, and ambiguity can be just as attractive as clarity. A large personality can make even the most basic character seem cosplayable. Like, I genuinely think he's such a good example because he's just jeans and a shirt and sunglasses, but like if I'd seen this, I would know exactly who it was just because of how big his personality is in the game. And it's just fascinating to me how a good narrative, just good storytelling can really inspire people to just dress up in the most simplest things. And even this is a great example too, because when I seen this the first time I was playing Fallout 4, I was like, there's a reason that they've posed like this. Like there's not really anyone else who just stands like that, and they were there for that whole cutscene standing that way. And I was like, this has to be to inspire people to cosplay. And then sure enough, when I looked it up, I was like, yep. Like they literally seen that pose and they knew that it was for that, and they were really interested in cosplaying it just based off of the whole pose and energy of the two characters. So this is a great example of the effect that posing and character specific items can have on cosplayers. The woman cosplaying as Darla, she stands in her signature pose with a bat, and the man who's cosplaying Skinny Malone has his unconventional mafia personality perfectly with the intimidating stance and the finger guns. So you can really see their personalities coming through in these pictures. This is an example of my previous work with Empire of Sin, when we were designing characters and we were thinking about cosplay already, like from the start. And this character was super popular with the whole team. And what was great is that this character was actually non-binary, so we wanted to make sure that we could include anyone in cosplaying this. So we were really trying to target people with different kind of designs here. Like, we were looking at, okay, this suit is super cool, the strap, we ended up changing the strap to have all this kind of artwork and stuff on it, different stitches. So if someone wanted to go full through with it, they could make like a really unique strap on it. And even still, like the key personality traits, confident, and like key physical traits. And we were talking about this and trying to figure out how we would make all these characters, like there were so many of these sheets, like we were really thinking about this the whole time we were designing on how we could target cosplayers. And then the question comes every time that we're looking at stuff like this, is that how can hold on. We're thinking like, how can we improve cosplay? And there's plenty of ways that we can. As I was saying, like inclusivity is thinking about that, thinking about ways that players can see themselves is definitely a really big thing. We're always asking ourselves, at least our team, and I think other studios are thinking about this now, especially how we can improve cosplay and how we can improve characters. Don't know why this slide isn't twice. But here you go. This is kind of questions that we ask ourselves as a team. Do players see themselves in your characters? How many opportunities can you think of for people with mobility issues, for people with disabilities, for non-white people, for individuals who aren't super muscular thin, for older women, also for women who want to dress conservatively, or women who wear hijabs, or men in headdresses. So I think thinking about all these questions can really help set you aside if you're developing a game or developing characters, and making them accessible for everyone, because cosplay should be accessible for everyone. It's a really safe space, and I think everyone should be able to see themselves or dress as something they like. To conclude, cosplay is super critical in getting game design. There's plenty of ways to make characters unique, ranging from facial scars to backstories, and this is our team. And I'm really excited about working with them, because they're a great group of people who really take on every single bit of feedback I've given them about characters. They're really interested in making the characters in our upcoming game really, really unique. Like I'm so excited. I'm genuinely so excited with the conversations we've been having relating to this about what kind of cosplays will come out of it. And it's definitely, if you're indie developing, it's different, but if you're working with a team, I think it's really important that they share your values, they share your interests, so your characters can be a true reflection of your interests and what you care about. And just in general, this is kind of my general cosplay exercise, I guess. This is just what I think about whenever I'm trying to make a character, or whenever the team is. We always kind of consult this and always kind of keep it as a general way to look at it, and always think about characters. So this would just be my general exercise and what the team would be seeing. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. But I hope that gave you a little bit of an idea of how we consider cosplay and game design.